Hi, I'm James Verdier, and welcome to the American Institute of Biological Sciences BioScience Talks, which is a forum for integrating the life sciences. For today's episode, we're joined by Thilina Surasinghe, who's a full professor at Bridgewater State University in the Department of Biological Sciences, Kunwar Singh, who's senior geospatial scientist at AID-Data and affiliate faculty at the Center for Geospatial Analysis at the College of William & Mary, and Amy Frazier, who's a professor and the Jack and Laura Dangerman Chair of Conservation Science at the University of California, Santa Barbara in the Department of Geography. They were all here to talk to me today about drones, and in particular, the promise that drone technology presents for undertaking biodiversity and conservation-related fieldwork. We had a great conversation about the technology's potential and current uses, as well as about fieldwork itself. So with no further ado, let's go to the interview. Thank you all very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, James.
It's a pleasure to meet you, James.
Pleasure to be here, James.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking today about drones and their use in fieldwork. And before we get into, the specifics and some of the applications, I was hoping you could give us sort of a very broad idea of what that means in a practical sense. What are some of the big applications? What are some of the ways that drones have been used thus far? And then we'll talk about some of the specifics of ways that they could be used in the future.
Well, I think the primary way that drones have been used in the field is for remote sensing and imagery capture. So almost like a personal remote sensing device that researchers can take almost anywhere and collect data on demand and not have to wait for a satellite pass to come every 16 days that maybe doesn't have the exact specifications that they want. So they've really been used for imagery capture at local scales, at very small scales. And one of the reasons that we really wanted to write this paper was because we saw so much potential for them to be used across the whole research life cycle. And just putting some of those ideas out there to start to see hopefully some more creative uses of drones in the field.
Yes, to add what Amy said, drones are widely used in other disciplines for various uses. And that was also one key intuition for us to see how we can bring some of those knowledge base from other disciplines or other areas to make drone more effective in perhaps in cost saving to do field work and supplement some of the observation that can augment our scientific findings. So,
Yeah, for example, to add on to what Kunwar said, drones have been, that's a book that we reviewed in preparation for, right, in this paper that actually focuses on using drones for delivery systems, right, delivering packages and things like that, right? So it seems like in outside ecology, environmental sciences, drone usage has gained momentum. So we saw an opportunity. For example, in my case, as an ecologist, conservation scientist, there are certain points in wetland ecosystems that we cannot access, right? It's physically not possible. So drone actually sort of circumvents that. Points where you cannot physically access, physically do field work, collect data, collect samples. Drones can supplement those gaps in field work.
And so don't let me put, words in your mouth, but out of curiosity, would an application like that, if you were looking to, kind of learn something about a wetland ecosystem, would it be something like flying the drone overhead and looking then at the, plant composition or sampling the water? What kinds of things would you use it for there?
Definitely, all of those things. I think imagery collection or even video to take a look at the site, maybe see if the plant that you are interested in studying even exists in that wetlands would be a first step. And then I think some of the applications that we aren't seeing widespread yet are using the drones to go in and collect the water samples, maybe a plant clipping, maybe a soil sample, something like that, and take it back to the lab so that that sampling can be done in a non-destructive or very minimally destructive way without having to trample out into the wetlands and maybe encounter a snake and have other hazards that often accompany fieldwork.
I will add one more component in this. Drone offers one advantage over many other platforms. We can have multiple sensors attached, which can offer us variety of data set that can be used not only to understand the biophysical properties of vegetation types, but also understand the topography, water content, moisture content in the soil. Having that, it gives us also gives me, as Amy suggested, that we can record the video. We can record video and we can analyze now and later in the future as well to understand what was and what it could be and where it is right now. So variety of aspect. And one last thing is that we can also connect the online database to identify vegetation, any particular is a biological event that is happening there to understand immediately.
Great, and that raises a question that I was kind of thinking of asking later, but I'll ask it now. What's it like to integrate the data that you would get from a new drone mediated procedure for data collection with data that might have previously come from another source, whether that be satellites or something else? Are they readily integrated, or is that a big challenge? What's it like?
Go ahead, Thilina.
I was going to say it would be a huge challenge because that field of data fusion, data integration, data harmonization, standardization, that's a field in evolution because like currently, like this is an apt timing. We are writing a working group proposal that includes this data harmonization. So I want to say it's there. The possibility is there, work has been done, but it is a field in rapid development. It's possible, but it's going to require a lot of computational infrastructure, the statistical framework for that, or a mathematical framework. So it's quick answer, it's possible, but it requires a lot of work.
Yeah, to build on that, I think there's a few issues. The first being that the sensors that we can fly on the drones are usually miniature and lower cost than a sensor that is being launched on a satellite. And so making sure the data that are collected from those line up is a first challenge. And then some of the calibration. So the radiometric, which is basically, is the camera sensing what you think it is sensing, and is it giving you data that matches or aligns with what you think it should be aligning with? And how that matches to calibration that's done for satellites, that can be really tricky with drones. So there's a lot of pieces that go into making your data interoperable or comparable across platforms.
And I think this is the key point that makes, I think, geographers, psychologists to think drones differently. What it means is that data fusion or bringing data from different sources to use may be a complicated effort for all the users because there's like novices, people with moderate experiences, but drone can be more effectively used for the field surveys where we don't have to necessarily think about data integration, fusion. If some organization has some advanced expertise in that area, they can indeed make that more effective, but still continue to keep focusing on a field survey.
Right, that makes sense. And I want to jump back and ask a very basic question about the technology, just to form a baseline for our listeners. What kinds of drones are we talking about here? I'm imagining quadcopters that are relatively small with just enough payload to carry the sensors that you absolutely need and nothing else. What are we generally talking about with these types of drones? Is it all the same stuff? Is there a wide variation? What are we looking at?
That's a great question. Kunwar and I explored this a bit in a paper a few years back and found that most research teams are using the lower cost $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 platforms. So things like the DJI family of drones, the EB drone, those platforms are reasonably priced and can handle a low cost camera and can be flown relatively inexpensively. Some well-endowed researchers may have the money for bigger platforms, with the $250,000 LiDAR sensors or hyperspectral cameras. But at the moment, we're not seeing huge adoption of that across academia, at least.
Yeah, another addition I want to make is for a different paper, the three of us co-authored. We actually came across a paper that assembled their own drone by off-the-shelf stuff. So people have done even going cheaper than buying a Phantom, right? So even that is possible, and their work got published. So meaning you can do really cool science even by you assembling and customizing your own drone.
But bringing back to the field survey, I think quadcopter is more effective because it can hover at one location for longer. So creating videos, high resolution, and then also taking snapshots of different flora and fauna can be more effective. So more and more what you mentioned in one of the publication, I think quadcopter were more in numbers than any other drone types.
Yeah, and for some of the applications that we highlight in this paper, quadcopters are definitely better suited for that. So any sort of sampling, hovering, dropping a tube to collect a water sample, a quadcopter type of platform is going to work well for that. I will, off the record, potentially mention that with changing regulations and I think our relations with international companies, a lot of universities and government agencies are prohibiting the use of the DJI drones and drones manufactured in certain areas of the world. And so that is potentially going to cause a shift in what platforms are used most widely. Presently, domestically produced drones in the same kind of use category as like a Phantom are very hard to come by, and they're very expensive. So it's unclear right now what that will mean for the future of drone-based research.
So some of the same tumult that we're seeing in a lot of other areas as well. I had a question about site selection because it was one of the items in your paper that really struck me as incredibly interesting. It occurs to me that a lot of sites for ecological monitoring are probably selected largely on the basis, or have been historically selected largely on the basis of their accessibility to human beings. And that may not give a complete picture, or as complete a picture as one might want as and someone who is conducting research. What's the potential like for finding new sites? Is it possible to fly a drone far out enough off of a established footpath to pick a good site, or pick a site that you wouldn't have otherwise selected?
Yes, definitely. Most, even small drones have a flying time capability around 45 minutes, and they can go pretty fast. So you can get quite a ways away from your footpath with your drone. If you have the video enabled, you're basically taking a virtual tour of the site. And so you can very quickly assess the characteristics of site, whether it has the plants or the animals or the ecosystem characteristics that you are looking to study, in again a way that you don't have to go trampling around and kind of hope to hit that needle in the haystack.
And also, when it comes to ground observation data, randomization is a key in ecological and environmental sciences. Having drone, it gives us advantage. And there's drone has one fundamental advantage. If we have mission planning software means design once, we can use as many times as we want. Drone will go the same location and collect the same data for that area over and over throughout a year, across years. That gives added advantage to this randomization, and areas that are inaccessible in a regular way, typical way when we do field surveys.
So do you actually wind up, kind of in some ways getting potentially cleaner data because you don't have the variability of, having entered the site with different numbers of people perhaps, or conducting those sorts of surveys in a more varied way because you can count on the drone to carry out its procedure the same way it did in prior iterations.
I think that's a great point, James. I think the imperfect detection is a problem that we have tried to model out of. I can't even remember what is the earliest paper that modeled imperfect detection occupancy, right? It's very pretty historical, decades-long effort, right? So you're right. So, but you're right. So the you can reduce that imperfect detection because the image you collect as opposed to an in-person visit can be retrospectively revisited and analyzed, right? So that advantage is there, but we should admit that even drones, especially with their high resolution in image capturing, could also gather both the signal and the noise at the same time, right? So that error does not completely go away, but that false negative problem that we have with field surveys can be minimized, not completely eliminated, minimized with drones.
And do you generally find that a drone-based survey, whether that be sampling or gathering image data, is typically less intrusive onto the ecosystem processes than you would have with traditional sampling techniques?
Definitely, yes. For example, I work quite a bit right now in wetland restoration. So restored wetlands within early phases where you actually have certain seeds emerging, that trampling effect can actually have major impacts on the vegetation growth, recruitment, and facilitation of subsequent species recruitment. And also, so that's actually in the plant sense, minimally, just trampling effect is heavily minimized with drone usage. The same can be applied to animal populations too, especially if you are looking at a reintroduced population, right? That where you try to minimize the human induced learning processes in that introduced population. Yeah, definitely yes. There are so many ways the drones can minimize that disturbances, perturbations, and even this imprinting type learning that might otherwise be imprinted on the animal population if there's too much human encounter.
Great. So in a sense, just having less of an effect on, on the things that you're monitoring. This is all sounding extremely valuable. I'm wondering also about another element, which was the potential for doing, interventions in a conservation sense using drones. I gather that that's been less realized as yet, but there's potential there. What kinds of things might be possible from, an intervention if you were, working to take a conservation action per se?
One of the neatest examples that I've worked around is the delivery of vaccine pellets in Arizona. Okay.
I'll add two more examples just to expand the. So one of my focus areas is geospatial impact evaluation, where we study effect of interventions in agriculture. So whenever we have irrigation infrastructure installed in any developing countries, we want to know the flow of water, whether it's seepage, whether it's leakage in some areas. Drone can help to carry out that thing. And sometimes we want to do reforestation. Drone can help to deliver seeds aerially, which is cost effective and also can be done for a larger area and in a shorter span of time. So these are two examples that adds what Amy mentioned.
Great. So you have potential for things like distributing vaccines as food pellets, and you also have potential for sending out seeds from the drones. That sounds like a potential payload challenge, but it's interesting. So you have the opportunity to kind of do multiple different types of interventions, without having to put boots on the ground, as it were, and carry things out in that way.
Yeah, and I think for the delivery of vaccine pellets to the prairie dog community in Arizona, it was a joint project with students at Arizona State University to actually design the drone that could release the pellets at the right rate to ensure that the area was covered. And so I think there's a really good opportunity to partner with our engineering friends in the engineering department to develop some of these unique devices that we might need for sampling or interventions with the drones.
Okay, great. So I think I've got, I'm well sold on this idea, and very excited about it. What are some of the challenges to implementing it? We've talked a little bit about cost and things like that already that might be potentially more expensive than some other traditional approaches. But why haven't we seen the widespread rollout of drones in ecological field research everywhere all the time as yet?
Well, you mentioned cost, and I think that is one of the big hurdles at the moment. So it's cost of the platform, the drone, it's cost of the sensors or the sampling equipment. It's costs to sometimes have someone on staff that can operate the drone. So it can take a bit of skill and learning. There's a licensing process that accompanies being able to fly the drone. So all of those things come together to make it sometimes challenging to have a drone as part of your research operations.
I have some thoughts about my distracted conversation. I think it might be erroneous to say that work has not been done. It has been done. It's ongoing in various organizations and across the world, but it has not become commonly available, accessible through common platform or open access sources. So designing software that can be installed in this drone system could be very effective. So there need to be more dedicated effort where we can bring those customized software and design that can be uploaded in the drone system and can be utilized effectively. And there are some work has been done in Australia, and there are some also work in Canada as well. And somewhere drone is also used in aquatic activities also. But they are scattered, not yet brought into broader community and made access to broader community. And this could be one effort done to bring back and make it open access, streamline.
That makes sense. So in this case, it would be something like making the software used and the protocols, the techniques, whatever the algorithms are, broadly shared among the research community, open access, so that everyone is able to use them. And it in a sense, would make potentially the software more of an off-the-shelf type of proposition rather than having to be something that was developed by each research team individually. Am I reading that right?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, great. And one element we haven't chatted about yet that I wanted to make sure we captured a little bit of a discussion about was, the potential for community science and involvement with drones. Is there potential to, kind of harness the expertise that already exists among, those who already fly drones to work on, sampling and ecological monitoring and things like that?
I think Kunwar mentioned something very relevant earlier on. So look at a citizen science platform, community science platform like iNaturalist, right? Where you actually have lots of species already ID'd based on photographs, right? So that identification can be useful to interpret drone imagery to identify plant species to animal species. So that's actually one obvious connection that is already there that could be developed in future to connect existing citizen science databases, species identification, training data sets, right? Are already there. Those training data sets are already there that can be used to interpret imagery collected from drones. So that's one obvious connection.
Yeah, another one is there's a huge community scientist movement for weather data, the weather underground stations. And I think if we kind of elevate that to drones, you can put a temperature sensor or a humidity sensor on a drone, and you can actually fly it vertically up and get a really good look at how the temperature is changing with height in the atmosphere. And that can give weather forecasters additional information to understand how weather might be developing. So that's an easy way to use a drone to collect data if you're a community member and kind of incorporate it into the sum of data that those weather forecasters are using. And I think that we could think of many other ways in which community members could use their drones in a way that could collect data that could be rapidly uploaded onto an online platform and available for use by researchers around the world, really.
Great, excellent. And I suppose the last question would be, along the lines of what kinds of things should we be looking for on the horizon, near or far? But what really gets you excited about, this field and the innovations that are taking place, and the ones also that will take place in the future?
That's a very interesting question. And I think one thing that comes in my mind, I will say that would be developing customized softwares. And that will require some effort. And given that we have now artificial intelligence and many other tools that are so easily accessible, I think that can means make this change with the way with the faster pace that was in the past few years. So I personally see more and more customized software that will be developed and easily accessible and could be adopted for various uses in ecological and environmental applications.
Yes, and to build off what Kunwar just said, I think the AI piece of things is really going to be an exciting pathway in the future. So you could imagine flying your drone, you have it on video mode, and you have some sort of AI-driven algorithm that is automatically identifying the plants as you are flying over and helping you make those decisions about where you might want to sample or where to set up a site. So completely automated, driven by AI technology, really taking a lot of the initial work that goes into any field study and making it that much easier. So I think that's on our horizon, but we might still be a few years away.
I also see the potential, exciting opportunity to potential and an exciting opportunity where drones can be used to satisfy certain global policies. For example, Convention on Biological Diversity has led into this global biodiversity information platforms where you are expected to each nation each government is expected to protect a certain percentage of lands, restore and manage certain percentage of lands for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years, and so on and so forth. So when you do either conservation or management, monitoring is a very important piece, because otherwise you would know whether your targets are reached through either restoration or conservation, right? So when individual nations implement these conservation and management strategies, the actual actions take place at very smaller spatial scales, right? Where the spatial scale is so small that Landsat or Sentinel is too large to make effective observations. So drones could be the mechanism to observe and monitor whether the conservation actions implemented, restoration actions implemented, are leading to the desirable goals and targets.
Yeah, that's great, Thilina. And I think one other thing building on that is this idea that we could have some sort of smart site, like a smart field site that's outfitted with drones that sit on towers, and every so often they can go out and sample whatever it is you need to sample, the atmosphere, the soil, the water. And so it takes that, that personal labor out of it. And so over the course of a week, maybe you've sampled every few hours without having to have, a poor grad student camping out in the middle of nowhere collecting those data.
Well, as desirable as the camping out in the middle of nowhere and collecting data sounds to me, that sounds like an incredibly efficient use, and there's quite a bit to be excited about here. Thank you all very much for joining me and chatting with me today. I've really appreciated it. It's been great.
It has been. Thanks for having us, James.
Thank you, James. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, James. It was very interesting and exciting to talk about.
And that concludes this episode of BioScience Talks. Just a reminder, the journal BioScience is published by Oxford University Press on behalf of the American Institute of Biological Sciences and is made possible by the support of our members and donors. Thank you, and talk to you next time.